All right, guys, welcome to the Money Talks group. We have Michael and Latricia Hill here to share their debt-free journey. So excited to have this couple on, and it's always fun to hear everyone's different stories. People out there just winning with money. So if I haven't already told you, please make sure you subscribe to the Money Talks YouTube page. Keep engaging in this group. Love the comments, love the questions. Keep utilizing it as best as a resource for you. But then also make sure you share it with a friend. Everyone can get a little bit better with their finances. I appreciate all over 1,200 of you guys in here. So definitely want to keep the group going, keep things on pace. So obviously you're not here to hear a lot from me because you hear a lot from me all the time. So want to jump right into Michael and Latricia. You guys paid off. I don't know how much you guys paid off yet, so this will be definitely a good piece to start off with. How much did you pay off? How long did it take? And then kind of what started you on this journey?
Well, first off, we paid off about $63,000. It took us about 5 years. So we started in January of 2014. We had our daughter in March of 2014. So there was a lot of kind of medical bills that came along with that on top of the $63,000. And we paid off everything in December of 2019.
Cool.
So 2018.
Oh, I was about to say, that just happened. Okay, cool. So what kind of debt was it?
So we had a car note.
Okay.
We had credit card bills and also
student loans.
Student loans. And then probably the hospital bills with having a baby in between there sometime. So that's
in to the 63.
So.
Oh, right. So it really gets up there. So what kind of took you on this? Because how long have you guys been married?
So we've been married 11 years, actually 11 years, August 1st of this year.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
So you guys had a nice little journey of 10 years.
Yeah.
So close to 6 years into this thing, you guys decided, hey, we need to switch things up. What was kind of the key to this? Have you had a little fight? Did something happen? What kind of turned you on to, hey, we need to focus a lot more on our finances?
I don't think it was. We've never really had fights about money. I think we've had more of discussions and a lot of deep questions about what's kind of the best thing for us and our family in the long run. What happened was we lived in South Bend for a few years, and our families lived in Northwest Indiana. And so we would travel back and forth to see our family. And one day we were listening to the radio, and this guy, Dave Ramsey, was on the radio. And so he was just talking pretty in depth about the benefits of having cash, the issues that come about from actually having to owe these large sums of money. And we did some research into his story and how he was a millionaire when he was in his late 20s and how it was taken away from him once the bank called all of the notes that he had on the properties that he owned. And actually, before we got married and we had an expensive wedding, a whole lot more than what we should have actually had.
Okay.
And, I think one of the tipping points for us was that we went to get a loan to pay off a significant portion of the wedding, and we got denied.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of like, okay. And we got denied. We still ended up being able to pay for the wedding. Some family helped us out, and my boss even paid like $2,000 on our wedding for us. And so it was maybe a couple of years after that we heard Dave Ramsey, and we started to talk about it. And we understood the challenge that came with it, because we had pretty much known that, hey, you get that in order for you to grow. You need that in order for you to do all of these great things, and you can manage it well. And so we're both strong Christians, and so we just talked about like the importance of being different and the importance of taking the road that's least traveled. And so we decided to, hey, like we're gonna draw a sand right here, we're gonna draw a stick in the sand right here, and this is where we're gonna be at. Yeah. And we're just gonna kind of figure it out and not take on any more debt. And one of the things that happened was we said we weren't going to take on any more debt, and then we ended up buying our house. Right. And we ended up buying our house, and we were pretty much struggling to make our mortgage payment. In fact, we didn't even have furniture in our house. Right. But we had a house. Right. We had a house. Yeah, you got the house. And we were using credit cards to actually float us in between paychecks. And so one day it was just like, this is crazy. Like this is like no way. And then we had our kids, and we started thinking about, well, we want to put our kids in a position where they can win, and we want to put them in a position where they can either already have their college paid for, or we want to put them into a position where we can already, maybe they get scholarships or things like that. And then more importantly, I think we started thinking about ourselves, and we were like, well, do we really want to have to work the next 40 and 50 years, or do we want it to be where we are in careers where we're choosing to work? And I think too, when we were in that position where we owed this debt, there was a lot of pressure to kind of keep up with the debt and take on jobs and apply for jobs that we necessarily weren't in love with, but the income was going to be able to get us to a point where we could get our head above the waters. Absolutely. And so we drew that line, and we were like, all right, this is it. This is what we're going to do. And we kind of worked it from there. Okay.
So what was the keys to it? So you drew that line. Had you guys been budgeting before? Because I know you said you were floating a little bit. Had you guys been really kind of religiously floating? Because I know Dave really lives by that budget every month before the month begins. Keep cash envelopes, like keeping tabs, like almost weekly to daily, like really have it dialed in. How did you guys kind of set out your financial plan before and even after?
Well, before we didn't really have anything in place. Okay. We didn't do a budget or anything like that. But once we started following him and kind of putting his theory into practice, we started to create a budget and get very detailed about the things that we needed to be detailed about. And that's bills, expenses, our income, and we created a budget, and we've been doing that since.
So when you created the first budget, I know this was a while ago, did you actually see that you had a surplus, or because I'm curious, because you said you were using credit cards to kind of go through. Did you guys actually have a surplus? Most people typically do, but you didn't have a surplus. So you did have an income problem when you went through. Okay, so that was the reason why you had to float.
We were straight red.
Okay. So how did you start to dig out that? Because obviously that's probably one of the first problems you had to address after seeing it.
I think it was more so we kind of knew what the issue was. So not only did we have an income issue, but we also had this huge amount of debt that we had. And it wasn't that it was that we were incurring more debt, because we've never been like big shoppers. We were never like huge on using credit cards, but it was just past debt that we had and the interest that we were trying to fight each time. And so it was more of a conversation of, like I was just saying, like, we need to get better jobs. Okay. And so my wife, she was already working in her role. She was making a pretty strong income. And I would say probably out of the two of us, I'm a little bit more aggressive about those types of things. And so
about going at it.
Yeah, about
you ready to nail down, let's go.
About and not even necessarily so about the debt, but just about having the pride to know that, I make enough to take care of my family.
Exactly.
And so it was like, well, we got to try and figure this out. And I put my nose to the grindstone. I would say most of all, God blessed us tremendously. So I got promoted to a management role, and it just all was like a big snowball effect from there. Like I remember my first bonus check.
Yeah, that's a telling moment when you get that bonus and you're like, I don't know, but that's how it goes. But no, you hit up on something very important that hadn't really been mentioned. When in a marriage and a couple, men tend to be a little bit more aggressive about the goal. And it is a pride thing. It's about, hey, I took on this responsibility. I'm a man. I'm a man's man, so I need to provide. Things ain't looking right. It's a hard shot to your personal, I wouldn't even say ego, but just personal confidence when you see that struggling, because that's not the intent. Everything you did was, hey, I thought this was the best decision. It's not working out, and I found myself kind of at my wits. That's so just empowering, because I'm that same way. Like my wife, I'm like, she can take all the time she wants thinking, but if we got something to go, I'm gonna move mountains to make it. I'm not gonna sleep. I'm not gonna eat. I'm not gonna do anything, because I'm like, it's one thing for me. Like if it was just me, I'd be like, okay, cool. But because I got a wife and I got somebody else that I'm supposed to be taking care of, that's where the equation gets a little bit more sticky, and you got to turn up the heat a bit. So it's such a powerful thing that you kind of realize that, but actually kind of make notice of that. So did you guys end up, while the income was coming up, did you guys end up having to cut back on anything? Did you change up anything in how you were budgeting? I know you got your sheet there. You had a chart you were tracking. So how did you adjust trying to go into this new style?
I think the biggest thing, we cut cable.
Okay.
That was one thing we did.
You still cut cable?
Yep. We don't have. we have.
I ain't got cable either, but I was just saying.
But we don't have cable, no. And I think, we also cut down our grocery bill.
Oh, wow.
So we limited the amount of times that we ate out during the month, and we had a small amount of budget for groceries. So Dave talks about rice and beans and rice.
Okay.
That's what we were doing.
Okay. Like same meal every day. It was fulfilling.
Expensive.
Like stretch meals. Like one meal on Sunday, you have it Monday, and we would turn that sucker into something else on Tuesday.
Right. Right. It looked the same, but the core is still there. No, you have to do that. And I think that's interesting because a lot of people, I can't do that. I was like, well, we all kind of grew up around the same time. I remember eating the same meal for 2 weeks straight. You know what I mean? No, and it seemed like there was never an end to that pot that I was ready to like you ready to move on mentally, but you're like, look, if I don't eat this, I'm not gonna eat. But as adults, we somehow, I'm purposefully doing this because if I do this long enough, it'll help get me to my goal. You guys kind of you mentioned, hey, you got this 63,000 you knocked off. Now, when you realize how much money it was, whether it's 20,000, 30,000, however, I noticed that it all has the same effect. Whether a person's paying off 150, whether they're paying 60, whether they're paying 20, it all seems to seem staggering. So how did you, 60 is no, which is plus some, but 60 is no kind of easy feat. How did you start to wrap your head around, hey, number one, this is actually doable for us to knock out? You know what I mean? What kind of made the light bulb? Was it in the beginning? Was it, hey, you started going down this, you're like, oh, you know what? This actually will happen. What kind of got you to where you was like, you know what? I can stick through.
I think we started out really pumped up and ready to go.
Okay.
And just listening to Dave Ramsey and all his callers that call in and do their debt-free scream, and we listened to how much they had and how much they made. Right. So it kind of got us going. And also we did, like Dave said, we list all our debt, smallest to largest, and we attacked the smallest and on down the line. And it really does help once you pay off that first debt and you get to cross it out and you see the progress. I think that really helped.
So we started out like this light bulb, like we were excited, we about to kill it, we had all these great dreams, and like partway through that light bulb kind of fizzled out. It was like,
well, yeah, because I was wondering, because I'm like, you're 5-year track, so 5 years. At some point, somebody would have woke up and be like, man, I don't want to do this no more. Like, like, I'm just tired. Like, you in a car ride for 8 hours. Like, are we there yet? You know what I mean? What's going on? So, like, what kept you on? Now, granted, you guys are married, so you got a little bit more of accountability there. But what really kind of helped keep you going? Because, yeah, I love being able to cross out those things, but that's only going to give you some momentum. Did you have a different way to celebrate, or what really kept you kind of going that long path?
I think, in my opinion, although I guess we weren't necessarily as gazelle intense as Dave would say,
right?
Because we still had our kids and activities, and with our son, he ran track, he runs track, and there's a lot of travel with that.
Right.
So each year we would have the National Junior Olympics, and each year he would make it, and we would go to those places, and that would be our vacation.
Okay.
So we did implement that and kind of help us to, I guess, get out of the rut of having to pay off all this debt and really not get a chance to do much.
Okay.
And I think too, one of the things that we didn't really talk about was we really had gotten to the point where we were like okay with not having to have new things and not having to have the latest things. And it was to the point where our kids, their Christmases were very small and like very, very slim.
That's okay.
And
they're still breathing, aren't they? They'll be okay.
We were good with the same cars that we have, and I think it was just coming to that realization that like there is a bigger goal that's at hand, and there's a bigger task that we want to accomplish, and so we're gonna have to be okay with letting go some of these creature comforts for a little bit, and that's what probably did it. And then as we went through it, I think that just being able to cross those things off and have that conversation, it was good. But then like towards the middle part, it was like, dang, we still got like 30 grand left.
Yeah.
We did 30, but you still got another 30, boss. So
we paid this, but it's still 30 grand.
Right.
And one of the things too, I would say also that we did, we always paid our tithes to our church. Like, even though we knew we had to pay out, and we had conversations with other people, and they were like, well, if you stop paying your tithes to your church, then you'll be able to. But we were committed to making sure that we made those payments. And I think that as we continue to be faithful to those things, we saw just like a continual progression of unexpected money coming in. Like we had closed on our house and ended up what was like 2 years or 3 years later, we ended up getting like a check in the mail because they had messed up the closing and we had no idea about it. And the bank was like, well, here is $1,000. Like we didn't know nothing about it. We was like,
well, thank you.
And so we every extra dime that we got, we would put towards it. And it was tough, but I think that my wife kind of drove us through that, because I was like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. Like I'm tired. Like I want to be able to go into a store and get whatever I want. Like my credit is good. Like I should be able to do that.
Right.
And for me, it was just really understanding like what her driver was. And her driver was more so like she wanted to feel secure about her household and her future. And you probably noticed like guys, we are okay. I mean, I'm okay with not necessarily knowing where my income gonna come from because I know I'm gonna get some.
Well, yeah, but no, I'm not as okay not knowing that piece. Like I got it.
My wife, she's like she needed that security on a day-to-day basis. So like I work a sales job. Like my wife's like she wants to have a consistent salary. Like I'm really good with knowing like there's gonna be some lean months and there's gonna be some fat months, but for her, she needs that consistent. So it was me having the growth and understanding to know like, okay, like I got to do what's not necessarily best for me, but what's the greater good for both of us.
And I mean, you kind of hit on it, like what you're trying to accomplish, what you're driving for is more than the latest phone, the latest, you know what I mean, latest car and things of that nature. And I think we get so lost in translation that, first of all, I mean, majority of millionaires is 80%. You know what I mean? They self-made, meaning they started with nothing. So if you're gonna start from nothing and have an abundance type cycle, somebody took a hit. We didn't get you know what I mean, a head start with somebody giving you $250 or whatever, $1,000 check, a house or something like that to get you going in your wealth building. You're starting with oftentimes in the negative. So you're starting off in the negative. You got to pay off the debt. You got to drive your income up. Then you got to begin to save, and you got to save from $1. Nobody gave you any boost to help get the savings going. You didn't get any IRAs passed your way, any stocks or anything like that. So if you're trying to build wealth, even if you're trying to build a business, you still gonna take some hits on those first in that beginning. It has a great ending. But that means, hey, I might not travel every month like everybody else, depending on what your lifestyle is. And I like you guys' story because a lot of people, you know what I mean, don't understand that. Like you said, you weren't as intense. You weren't as gazelle intense. You kind of self-paced your way through it. You kept a consistency going. You kept yourself on par. Yeah, it took you a little longer. Yeah, you got a little tired throughout the process, but you got to the end. You figured out what was going to work for you to get you to your ultimate goal. And for some people, it's 2 years. For some people, it might be 7. I don't know. But the fact is you had some sort of plan and you're driving at it. And it's okay that you did that. I mean, now what's different now? So you've been out of debt for 2 years. Hopefully you don't feel as bored or, man, I don't want to do this no more. I'm pretty sure you don't regret it. You know what I mean? But what type of things since you paid off the debt, how is that trying to transition your thinking for life and things you've been able to accomplish from a family aspect?
We eat better.
That's expensive. It's expensive to eat well.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that we talked about too. Like we couldn't afford like organic foods. We couldn't afford those type of things because it was just way too expensive in our budget. And we try to eat consistently healthy, but those things, that's really hard to do. Like when you got a budget of $150, you know, for food. And I think one of the things that we changed is like we eat a lot better. We eat a whole lot healthier. We still got the same cars. Like
there's nothing wrong with your car.
Same car since college.
So what kind of cars are these? Because like you was like, this is the third time you mentioned that we still got the. I'm like, I still got the same car. It's paid for. Like a paid for car I get you. So what kind of car are these?
So I have a 2001 Oldsmobile Alero.
Really?
From college.
I got it.
Yeah, because they stopped making them in like 2003.
You can't even find the Oldsmobile in a lot.
How many miles is on the Alero?
250.
Wow. It's not making no sounds. Like the engine is just going.
That's about the only thing that's going. The air don't work on it.
The kids hate to ride in it.
The kids hate to ride in it. The driver's window don't roll down. There's no hubcaps on it. But I start that sucker up with pride. It's mine. I don't have no car note. I can put my gas in it. And I'll wear a nice suit in it and get out of it properly and go do what I need to do.
Alero. I wanted one of them. It's good to know they're durable vehicles. I should have gotten that. What kind of car does the wife have?
So I drive a 2005 Dodge Caravan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we cash flow like our last 2 vans because her car that we had paid off, we got hit by a deer, and then someone hit us last year on the highway. And again, we were in a position like, well, we're debt free. We could technically go out and get a Honda Odyssey for 30 grand and be good. But now that our kids are older, we're like, we want to set an example for them and let them know, like, even though you have it, that doesn't mean that you go ahead and do it. So we were without a car looking for a van for what, like 6 months? 7 months.
Wow.
So we were all in the Alero smoking.
With the window that don't roll down.
The driver's window that don't roll down.
Oh, man. That is wonderful.
I will say we're looking to upgrade that.
Yeah, because I was going to say that has to be a part of the plan. Like, it's been 10 years. Like, I usually don't say this, but you might, if it's not a sinking fund for that, we might want to start that process. No, that's phenomenal. So it sounds like you guys have great harmony and discussions about how you're diligent, not just with your finances, but your process for your life. So what are things that you kind of point out that you're like, hey, I know we really do this well in our communication about money together?
I think the biggest thing is just like having somebody to lead and take charge with it. And so for us, like she just kind of leads that charge with it. She's an accountant. She's really disciplined. She's like super, super detailed. Like I go to Menards to this day and I have to come back and tell her what was this for and what was that for. And I'm like, I bought garbage bags. Like, what else are you expecting me to get at Menards? And so it was just like kind of getting to that point where you give somebody the lead and that's their job and that's what they're supposed to do to kind of guide through that. And then I think also like we try and talk about things in a very, very detailed approach. So we've talked about buying a new house and buying a new house, we can afford it, but it's going to be like on a 30-year term. And we're like, well, do we want to go 30 years? Like, is it necessary for us to be able to have that nice of a house?
Right.
Like, do we want to have that much debt in our name? Or is it like, well, is this house fine? Could we just redo a couple of things and, just run through it? And then we kind of talk about, well, we're about to pay the house off. Like, what could we do with that money as opposed to putting it towards another mortgage? So
you're about to pay off your house in how long?
10 years, less than 2 years. So it's like, well, we kind of weigh those options. Like we could sell it. It's appreciated really well. We can make some cash from it. But do we want to take on having to have this large amount of debt again?
Right. No, I mean, it's very prudent, especially when a house is a good example. Like I try to explain to people, like cars, you can kind of reason out, you can kind of make a decision very quickly with that. But a house, you really have to think about, okay, am I going to be in this house at least 3 years plus? Otherwise, I'm not going to get the value out of being in the home. So, and to your point, what am I getting out of the new home? Is that setting me back? Because hopefully if you're moving to another house, it should be an easier move. You should be closer to your goal. So if you were paying off a house in 10 years, maybe that goal should be more 8 or 7 after you sell and move forward. So again, like you said, it's perspective. So you guys, how often do you guys actually sit down? Because she's an accountant. So is it more you kind of draw it up and be like, hey, this is what I need you to do? Or is it like a planned meeting, like, hey, these are my submission requests for this month. Can we work that in there and we'll see what the balance sheet come out with later? Like, what's you guys' process on how you discuss the finance?
I think I'll say one of the things that we also really did a good job about, because we ensured that everyone had like spending money. So once you got your spending money, whatever left was in the account, that don't need to be touched.
Okay.
And so we would kind of clash heads on that. And so what we ended up doing was, like, my spending money comes directly out of my check into another account. And so I know this is my spending money and I can do whatever it is that I want to do for it. And as we've seen, like, our income increase, I just naturally say, hey, I need an increase in my spending money because that's just how life goes. Like, things are more expensive. So we've done that. And I think the rest is just really, I don't think that we're as diligent about it as we were before because
you let your foot off the grass.
We just have a whole lot more room, you know. That's just the reality behind it. Like, our margins are way bigger than what they were before. So it's just kind of like, well, I need to go do this. I think our rule is like anything over $75 you have to talk to the other person about. But anything less than that is like, boom. Like, if it's your money, you do whatever you want to do with your money. But when it comes to us, like, buying family members gifts and things like that, we come together, we talk about it, and then we decide upon amount and kind of go from there. You got anything you want to add?
Yeah. It was a little rough with me taking the head role in the budget. I guess as a man, he didn't want to feel like I was being the mom and saying, "Oh, here's your allowance. This is what you."
This is your portion of your check.
So it took a while for us to get to the point where he can understand and appreciate my role in everything. Because I would say he's more of a spender than I am.
Okay.
And so,
but you're an accountant, so you know the effects of everything.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm more detailed about everything. So when he talk about going to Menards and me asking, okay, what did you buy? Well, I had to get him to understand I'm separating these expenses in different categories so we can see how we're spending and see our spending patterns to help us for the next month.
Right.
So that was a little difficult. It's getting better.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. I know for me, one of the things that I had to work on, obviously tone and language with my spouse, but it's really tough to tell somebody that goes to work just like you go to work that, hey, bring your money in. We're gonna do this. All right, your check could be $1,000, $1,200. Well, here's your $150. Well, what you mean? Where's my $150? And I brought in this. Whereas, you know what I mean? Like my grandparents, my mom, her parents, the father, her dad used to just come and just give the check, like, with nothing. You know what I'm saying? No, he didn't even think twice. And I'm like, yeah, we're not in that time anymore. Like, people have some say-so over their money. And it's one of those things of, like you said, when one person is a little bit more educated in the strength of money, they have that strength. No matter if you're the man or the woman, whatever you say can come off as judgment, like you're doing something wrong. Like, it took a long time but it took some work. It's a progressive process with the spouse to help them understand. I personally, I could care, like you said, when you got the margin, I'm like, I don't care what you spend your money on. Hey, you know what I mean? Spend over this, send me the courtesy of a text. Like, would you be mad if you come to the house and I got this new car and, you know what I mean? Well, yeah, send me the courtesy of a text. Yeah, we got it, but it's not about that. It's about, hey, we're working a plan, understanding, you know what I mean? I'm managing the plan. So if you did it, cool. I just need to adjust something else, or, hey, maybe we need to have a little bit further discussion about that. But it does come off that way. It does come off as judgment. It does come off as, you know what I mean, somebody is towering. And I'm like, no, we just adults. I'm like, you can spend your money however you want to spend it. But, hey, I need to know if you're not tracking. I am. So that's part of knowing. And, yeah, if you're asking, it's a little bit of accountability in there. You know what I mean? Accountability in its boundaries. Because this whole plan is in agreement. It's not a signed agreement, but it is an agreement between you and your spouse. Like, hey, we want to reach this. If we're dipping off to other avenues, that's going to prevent us. We're saying that this no longer is important. what I'm saying, what can we do going forward? So good. So being detailed, understanding the role, even if it's 60 or 100,000 or what have you, work the plan that's going to work for you, even if it takes you a little bit longer. And I think you even mentioned in there you change your mindset. Some of the new stuff is just not that important. You know what I mean? And I imagine like how you had kids. How have you seen differences in how your kids approach things based off how you interact with money?
I think our kids have they have a really good. Our kids have money that just sits on their dresser. Like they, and even when they do try to make purchases, one of the things that we try to do is not necessarily discourage them from making purchases, but try and get them to understand, like, okay, you make this purchase, that means you're not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. So don't come to me asking, because I'm gonna say, hey, well, you decided you wanted to buy Takis with your money. Like, so that's kind of where it goes. So we give them some leeway, but we also want them to be understandable and knowledgeable. Like, it just doesn't make sense for you to pay $50 for a basketball player on Tuesday because you can do it. Like, no, go put it back and call it a day.
That was our son's recent. That was his recent question. He wanted to spend about $50 on upgrading a player on the video.
Oh wow!
Like, does that make sense though? And he had just made a comment like, I don't see why people gamble. Why would you want to gamble your money away? And it's like, this is almost like the same thing. Gambling with this player, you know what I mean? So
yeah. No, that's
once you spend the money, we also have to kind of step in too. And
yeah, if they're going too far off the rails, yeah, let them make a mistake here and there, but something that's just way off base. Hey, this ain't gonna give you anything. You might be good for a couple things, but it'll be a rabbit hole. So I definitely want to be respectful of your time. As we begin to wrap up, what would you say to that couple? They haven't started, or maybe they're in their debt-free journey, that you would encourage them to do things you should do to, number one, stay the course or start the course of really taking control of their finances, addressing the debt, getting that out, and getting on the same page with their spouse. That's one of the bigger things, really leaning into getting on the same page. How would you guys encourage them, offer any advice? Feel free to kind of respond there.
I would say just be okay with being different. Like, just be okay with doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing, and definitely just having a big picture view, like really thinking about things in the long run. So, like, my barber, like, I talked to him, like, do you really want to be cutting hair until you're 70? Like, you might like it, but like, is that something that you really want? Like, I love my job, but if someday I decided, like, I'm good, like, I don't want to be like, I still got to go because I got to pay X, Y, and Z.
Right.
The bigger picture is like, you want that freedom and that flexibility where if they let you go, you're like, see you, goodbye, have a good day. Like, it's good.
Exactly.
Worried or anything like that. So I would say just those things, having a bigger picture in mind, being okay with just being different.
Yeah, and then I would say, you definitely have those people out there who are not interested in doing anything like that as far as getting rid of debt and standing with debt, and that's fine. That's their choice. But for those who are kind of in that space that is looking for a change, I would say, if you have a spouse, you definitely have to make sure you guys are on the same page. And I think communication is the key. And not just talking about everything, but watching how you speak, the tone, and things like that. And you just kind of have to think about your future and what is it that you want. I think the biggest thing for us was we didn't want to have to feel like we're dependent on a company provide us with income in order to pay for our bills and things like that.
Right.
To get to the point where if something was to ever happen, we would be okay. And so I think that was our drive, and also thinking about our kids and trying to set them up in a good position to where once it's time for them to go to college, because them student loans are crazy.
Yeah.
It's time for them to go to college. No, you don't have to get no student loan.
Yeah.
And so I think that those are the biggest things that someone may want to look at when they're looking to kind of get rid of their debt and live a different type of way. Don't worry about, like Michael said, don't worry about trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah. They're broke. You didn't caught up with them. Like, trust me, y'all running the same race.
Exactly. We had that moment where we were living paycheck to paycheck, right, and we didn't even have enough income to meet all of our bills. And it just feels great to be in a position where that's no longer the case for us. We have our emergency fund. We're out of debt. We have our mortgage, and we're working on getting that paid off. Right. We're also to the point where I was able to reduce my schedule at work. So
awesome.
In 32 hours a week, and I'm able to be at home with the kids whenever they get out of school. That was a big thing for me too. And
you know what? There's one other thing I forgot about. I think too, it helps if you have like a couple or an individual that you can use for as an example. Like, there was a guy that I knew very well. He was a customer of mine in my branch, and he was super filthy wealthy, and he was an executive at Chase. And he told me, like, one day Chase told him, like, they wanted him to move his office up north. And he said, I drove there and I was like, today's my last day. And him and his wife had enough. He was like, they realized in their 30s, like, they needed to start investing. They needed to set money aside. And he said, Michael, he said, it wasn't that I left on bad terms. He said, I left on my terms. Like, I didn't want to make the hour drive from Gary to Chicago anymore. And he said, I told my wife, like, this is it. And she was like, that's fine. And he said, it haven't worked since.
Right.
And so, like, just hearing that, like, I would come home and tell my wife, like, look, we talked today. Like, I would meet him on Saturdays. We would talk over breakfast. We would talk about investing. Like, and if you saw him, you would not think that this guy is a millionaire, but he's got it all in control. And I was like, I want that to be me.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. A lot of the actual millionaires, they're hiding in plain sight. They're people you're walking, you're going to church with, you're at the gym with, like, you just rinky dink. They don't look flashy. They don't make a lot of noise. And I mean, after being out of debt, like, you realize why. You know what I mean? Like, I'm very comfortable throwing a t-shirt, throwing some shorts. I'm not really trying to attract too much attention. And I get why they do that. You know what I mean? Because they're comfortable in their skin. They're good. You know what I mean? So they're like, I don't have to impress nobody. I'm fine with who I am. So no, such a good point. And I definitely appreciate you guys stopping in, sharing your story. Guys, if you haven't already understood, hey, you can actually be debt free. You can do this. It may take you a little while, may do it quicker, but the fact is you can actually do it. If you haven't already, like I said, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, join Money Talks. Feel free to continue to invite your friends and family. If I haven't talked to you yet, or if you have any questions, please post it in the group. I'll make sure we get to it. But until next time, next week, have Alex here to talk about how you can kind of get your resume intact, get prepared for the interviews. So stay tuned next week. We'll be back. Let's see. And